Hello there, guys. What is going on? Daniel Childs back here again. The end. It does feel a little bit like the end, to be honest. At the moment, Middlesbrough 1, Chelsea 0. Let's get that over there, and you can see my depressed face, as I'm sure many of you are. Thank you if you are watching live in the chat, bearing a little bit of therapy. It kind of has to be. I mean, I have to give Chelsea some credit for trying to start 2024 a little bit worse than 2023, but it's a disastrous night for Chelsea. I think the only saving grace is we are in a situation in this competition that there is another leg, and that leg takes place at Stamford Bridge. It is only a 1-goal deficit, so the idea it's completely game over for Chelsea is obviously not entirely accurate, but that doesn't eradicate what is a horrendous result, a really bad performance, and a night that will rightly, as we lay blame at the players, which I think is right for individual performances, it will also lay blame and responsibility for Pochettino, right? Now, I think there is a reality that we can't get past. We've loved him as a player this season, but if Cole Palmer does what he should do, Chelsea probably win this game very comfortably. And it's that thing about football, right? That as a coach, coach blame versus player responsibility, that there is just a alternative universe where Palmer, for most of this season, does what he's been doing, is clinical, and Chelsea win. And then we're sitting here having a very different conversation. But there was still a lot of time after that initial miss, and even after the misses that Palmer had after that, going into half time, for Chelsea to rectify things. But unfortunately, it did feel like an inevitability that Chelsea would lose that game, because I've sat here so many times over the years and reviewed games of that nature, especially watching Chelsea huff and puff, fail to blow the doors down against a low block, and seeing similar things specific to this season from this group of players it's not abnormal. I think the abnormal thing is you have to look at the opposition. An opposition that batters Chelsea in injuries, got 2 more today, is mid-table in the Championship, and hasn't had a lot of confidence recently. They've actually been underperforming this year. So all of that combined, it's not just a result that you'd get in the Premier League. I think there is added context to that, right? And I think that I can talk about mentality of players, and it's game state and game management. Of course, you put some of that onto individuals, but then as a coach, it's your responsibility to try and instill that into your group of players to make sure that they are able to handle the to and fro, the back and forth, the ups and downs of a game, because you can miss chances. Even brilliant players can miss chances. And then sometimes you do get help on the counter. But we've seen a number of times this season that when Chelsea go 1-0 down, they have very little solution for getting back into the game. and they had a lot of time against a championship opposition, and we got worse in the second half from a creative point of view. The subs didn't really impact things. They didn't really change the game. Individuals did not come on and make a difference. Individuals who should be doing a lot better didn't make a difference. And again, this is why you can't all put it on Pochettino, because again, Cole Palmer, simple chances, like against Wolves, Raheem Sterling, simple chances that he has to be putting away. And all of that combined means, of course, as it always should be, it's a shared blame. The team wasn't that surprising to me. The only surprise to me was that Armando Broja didn't start. I thought, given that Chelsea had done well with him as a centre forward at the weekend against Preston, it was going to be another physical game. I thought that Broja would add a height that you probably need. And also, as a striker, he's just scored a goal. I think you want to try and build from that confidence. But Pochettino clearly felt different. He played Cole Palmer up front. It was kind of like a 4-2-2 out of possession. You had Gallagher kind of joining him. It reminded me a little bit of the Arsenal game in that aspect. We have seen at times that kind of formation, and Madueke and Sterling were playing a little bit more narrow, which then I think hurt Chelsea from a defensive point of view that we'll get to. The warning signs of where the Hackney winner came from were there within the first 30 seconds. And I do have to put some blame on Levi Colwill, and I don't think it's all down to him playing out of position, because I think there are simple things that a defender, a player of his caliber and his quality, playing at a level, should still be able to do. An argument I've continuously heard for why Levi should play as a left back over playing, say, Maatsen, who's now in Dortmund, over it, is height, right? Physicality. But he wasn't really providing that. He made a really bad back pass, back header that nearly got Chelsea in trouble very early on, that led to one of Borough's players going off injured. And the fact that it came down that flank later on in the game, just the sloppy things we saw in the first half against Preston, the sloppy things we have seen from players before, that complacency, and the goal itself, I think, is a combination of, I've seen people, point blame at Thiago Silva for not maybe tracking back. I think Levi's positioning, particularly just being very passive in that situation again. I'm not saying he's fully to blame for that goal, but the way Chelsea would transition on from that position. And then I feel on that aspect too, especially going down the flank, and it's a criticism I've had of Raheem Sterling all season, because I think the evidence is just so clear that it's happened, it's cost Chelsea over and over again when he's been on the pitch, is the tracking back from him being very non-existent. And, I try not to scapegoat. Chelsea have just lost to a championship team, and we've already spoken about Cole Palmer's missed chances. The first one, he has to bury in the bottom corner. The second one, he has to be more instinctive. I mean, it's just easily tapping it into basically an open net. The third one, a little bit different. It's not exactly a glaring miss, but you could, for a player who has been sensational since he joined Chelsea, it looked like those chances absolutely killed him today. And that's, a concern and worry, but I think he'll respond because he's a very good player. With Raheem Sterling, it's a consistent problem I've seen throughout the whole season, and he is a much more experienced player than Cole Palmer. And I think that Sterling simply, from a performance point of view, is doing very little to justify a starting place in the team. Now, what I will say is, bringing on Mudryk later on, I mean, Mudryk was atrocious too. And I mean, this is the problem we have with Mykhailo Mudryk at the moment. And when you don't have Nkunku available, and other injuries Chelsea suffer at the moment, is that I look at Mudryk and he's so raw, he's so erratic. It feels like a little bit of a headless chicken there. He could be atrocious, but he could also be brilliant and do something magical. I think overall, Mudryk gives you a better work rate than Raheem Sterling, which is why I think that Mudryk probably I'd still be playing, given both of those choices at the moment. But I'm not trying to sit here and tell you that Mykhailo Mudryk is the saviour and Mykhailo Mudryk starting this game changes absolutely everything, because he, in that position when he came off the bench, played some horrendous balls. And I think it's just a general malaise I see, selfishness across the team, and this is a criticism I've laid at this team before and again. You have to maybe ask questions of the coach that this mentality, this demeanor, this instinct in the team is there's a sense that when things aren't clicking, players make very silly decisions, especially after the goal. I got a sense that Chelsea suddenly lost their heads a bit. And I don't like that because it reminded me of the Luton game. It's reminded me of other games this season when at Newcastle away, we've seen a pattern, and it's not. I don't think we can just always put it down to inexperience. These players have now experienced things as well. Um, and I expect after a period of time, especially away to a championship team, I expect a lot better. The second half, we knew what it was going to be. Middlesbrough were going to sit deep. They were going to sit in a back five, and it was then down to Chelsea to try and break them down. Pochettino brings on Breuer. He brings on Mikhailo Mudryk. He eventually brings on Alfie Gilchrist, but didn't have much trust in any of the other substitutes because Chelsea do have a slim bench at the moment. And I just thought it was the classic, low block problem. Chelsea being very uninventive, rushing things at times. The touches of players when they needed to be better just weren't sharp enough. It was very predictable side to side. I thought players at times, as the game went on, it was that sort of classic thing as well. It felt like confidence started to drain from Chelsea players, or at least the lack of risk taking. So it'd either be kind of a hopeless ball into the box. I thought we didn't utilise Breuer at all. Especially because Breuer was making runs. He was trying to get inside the box for a number of times. And I don't think we utilised him, especially because they were sitting so deep. So naturally, you have to go out wider. I thought there weren't enough quality balls into the 6-yard box for a player like Breuer to try and capitalise on. There were a few half chances. Mudryk had a chance from the edge of the box that he hit straight at the goalkeeper. Gallagher had a chance that went wide. I don't think Gallagher had a particularly good game tonight. And as someone who has been brilliant this season for Chelsea, been a real, a player that spearheaded things. He was no better than anyone else. I actually thought one of the few rare bright spots tonight was Moises Caicedo. It felt like he was trying to drag things and trying to keep Chelsea attacks alive and trying to win balls back. I think intercepting things. I think that a loss is a loss, right? And it's not that this type of loss is abnormal for Chelsea. It's not like the misses we saw in the first half are completely abnormal either. I think there will, of course, be, as there always is with Chelsea at the moment when Chelsea lose, there will be doomsday proclamations, as there always is. There is a reality that Chelsea have won quite a few games recently, but people who are more critical of Pochettino have pointed to flaws within those performances. I have agreed with some of those. I've disagreed with some of those, or I think some of those have gone overboard personally. I don't think all of them have been unjustified, but I think when we do win games, I get frustrated when there's this kind of counterbalance when we don't do well. If you don't like a coach, it's their fault. When we do well, we don't praise the coach at all, and it's all on the players. I don't like that balance. I think we've got to have more nuance about that. So the way that's not making me go overboard at the moment is we do have a second leg of this game, but the second leg we have to step up, and Chelsea do have another game before then, which of course is against Fulham at the weekend, and the performance has to simply be a lot better. And I think from Pochettino's sake, one of the things I'm seeing in the comments and one of the things that I don't think is ridiculous for people to point out is Pochettino's decision making over certain players and where they play. Playing players maybe out of position. Levi Colwell, the left back experiment simply has failed. And in the transfer window, especially the January one, you get a real sharp look at decision making, and in terms of looking at your decisions over the course of a season and what you do with players can be really impactful in a short space of time. Letting Ian Maatsen go to Borussia Dortmund on loan, a player who has kind of been looked past all season at left back. When we've had Marc Cucurella play there, Ben Chilwell is hopefully back soon. We really need him back soon. I dread to think that Poch is going to do what he did right at the start of the season, and we see Levi stay at left back and we see Ben Chilwell playing left wing, hopefully this time when Chilwell is back. Chilwell for me, and I'm just such a big advocate, I think it just harms us because I haven't liked it since the start. It's not that Levi's never played a good game in that position. I think in recent weeks, it's not so much been his positioning, it's more been his own defensive actions that I've criticised. So that's on him. But I think from an attacking point of view, just the lack of width we have at times, it feels like that left winger, and I'll give blame to Sterling for not tracking back, but it feels like that left winger has to do a lot of work on his own. He isn't getting an overlap from someone. Very rarely will you see Levi. I think once this season we saw Levi with Fulham combining with Mudryk. But other than that, how many times in games have we seen the left-sided fullback make a diagonal run into the box? As I say, when Cucurella was there, you got a little bit more of that. No one in our squad other than Ben Chilwell can do that diagonal out to in run like he can. And that's what makes him a devastating fullback or wing back, as we know. And hopefully he can provide that when he returns. But it's not like Pochettino has had absolutely no options. I mean, I'm not at Cobham. Was Maatsen so bad in training? Was he so bad that he couldn't play left back? And then you kind of ponder, why was he kept in the squad just to kind of play sporadic games at left midfield, at right wing? And it didn't really make a lot of sense to me. So that will be a decision that will be scrutinised as the season goes on, whether that was the right call. And, you know, if Chilwell stays fit, if we get Cucurella back before the end of the season, we may be looking at a different situation here. But I don't completely disagree with people. As is the same, another positioning argument we've been having all season is Enzo Fernandez. Enzo didn't play a lot of the game today. Did he come off too soon? Is he playing in the right role? Is he not playing deep enough for Chelsea to really dictate the game? I think some of that is still a little bit overboard. I'm not entirely convinced by Enzo's performances. I am not entirely convinced I don't think he's playing well enough for us to sit here and go, if you just move him back, he will have the freedom of the park to do whatever he wants. But I don't, there's nuance, right? I also don't think that the idea of maybe playing him a little bit deeper will have no impact. And actually, probably what we signed him. And now Moises Caicedo, I actually think has been playing well for Chelsea recently. I actually think that's why we had those two midfielders. That's why we invested in those two midfielders, to have those two midfielders in that way. And Caicedo is very much now doing an impact in the game in the way I wanted him to. So then you hope that Enzo can play that Fabregas role to simplify it alongside an Nemanja Matic. I know, again, sounds very simple, but that's the way I'm looking at it at the moment. We move on to Fulham. I hope that Nkunku is back fit. We will see the selections for Badiashile, Chilwell. I hope Cole Palmer can get over this, because let's be honest, he has been Chelsea's probably best player so far this season. Him and Gallagher have really been neck and neck on that. But if you're just going off goals, then it has been, I think, for me, Cole Palmer. But I think both of those players have been crucial, and both of those players had bad nights tonight, especially Cole Palmer. And it's that classic thing in football. Those chances are game defining. They really are. They make the difference, and it's why Chelsea have so lacked a clinical finish. Pochettino was asked in a pre-match press conference about a striker. Now, I know that there are talks for certain players out there, the likes of Paulo Dybala as a potential option. I don't think Ivan Toney's moving this month, and I don't think Chelsea will or should be making that move. Maybe at this point, but there is just, I don't know how much a coach can do when we have such basic chances. Like, if anyone's seriously telling me that Pochettino is at fault for Palmer's miss in the first instance, and especially the second instance, and some of the issues we've seen in recent weeks where Raheem Sterling doesn't pass to either Jackson or Palmer against Wolves, these are things that I think we just have to be honest. You can't coach that. Some of that has to go down to responsibility on the players to finish those chances. Chelsea is still a team that are able to create high quality chances in game. You don't take those chances, you're then punished. And Chelsea then, I think it's what happens after then, right? That then you, I think, are going to be more critical of the head coach of then when we're in that situation, you go into the halftime break. Why can't we fix it after that? We will have a chance to fix this particular fixture because we have a second leg at Stamford Bridge. And I would say, given our recent form at Stamford Bridge, I'd back us to beat Middlesbrough. They still are a championship team. And if you look at the course of the 90 minutes, Chelsea made good opportunities. It reminds me, I know it's a very weird comparison, but it reminds me a little bit of Dortmund two-legger last season when that we lost that first leg 1-0 away from home, but we created quite a bit in the first leg. And I thought if that game plays out again, it probably goes in another direction. And then we saw the second leg where Chelsea won 2-0. So it's not to sit here and tell you that it's absolutely over. Chelsea are over. The season's over. But it's a devastating night. The fans that have travelled a very long way to the Riverside Stadium tonight, where it's been absolutely freezing in the UK, it's been snowing in recent days, we're not treated to anywhere close to a good performance. And just because we've got a second leg does not make this performance okay, does not mean that all the players are free from criticism. Pochettino's free from criticism, and they need to respond quickly because this is a really bad setback. And I think that Pochettino himself will probably face sterner questions than most of the players, but I don't think that tells the whole story given what Palmer did in the first half. But that's what it is. Those are my thoughts. Please let me know yours in the comments below. And as ever, please do follow me across socials at SonOfChelsea. You can listen back to this show on the podcast feed, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.